welcome back to What the Wellness Center. Our question today is, how do I unite my team behind a common goal? I love this question, and it's something every business owner can relate to. But before we get started, I've got a surprise guest. I'd love to introduce you to Jane. Okay, maybe you had high hopes for someone else, but I promise you Jane is something special. Jane is a complete practice management software, and their team is fueled with one main goal: to help you and your business thrive. If you're curious to learn more, you can head over to jane.app. We actually do have a surprise guest today. This is Paul Kuthi from Tributary Coaching. He's amazing, and I've learned a ton from him, and he is great at uniting teams. So welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to join you today, and thank you so much for the lovely intro.
Okay, let's jump in. So how can we unite teams behind a common goal? First, before looking at a whole team, I thought it'd be good to look at what it takes to unite one person behind a common goal. So Paul, you have a great story about this from your kayaking days. I'd love if you could just share with our audience today about that.
Sure. Yeah. But so before my business coaching career, and I got the pleasure of working with clients in the context of growing their businesses, I was a professional kayaker and adventure guide, sort of somebody who would be there alongside somebody during some of their most challenging moments while pushing themselves mentally and physically to go down waterfalls, to go down the river. And so when I first moved out west, I was sort of a hot dog kayak instructor, and I thought I knew a whole lot about kayaking, which I did. What I didn't know a lot about was actually helping somebody achieve a goal of their own. And so I would be atop this waterfall with a student that would be really having this big goal to run this waterfall and like survive, just because that's always good. And I would pull up next to him and say, "Hey, it's gonna be great. You're gonna run this waterfall. We're gonna have high five moments at the end, all that sort of stuff." And then I would proceed to give them all of the info that they could ever possibly need to run this waterfall. So I would say, all right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull out from beside this rock, and then we're going to get out into the main current. And you see that little ripple of water? We're going to paddle over that, and then past that mossy rock on the left, there's a space behind it. We're going to take a break there, paddle to the lip of the waterfall, go off the right side of the waterfall. Don't go off the left. It's real bad over there. We're going to go off the right side. When we land, though, there's current going to the left. So we're going to paddle to the right as we land, and I'll see you in the eddy down there on the right side. Sound good? Here we go. And I'll paddle off, and I'll look behind me, and then nobody there. But they would be still sitting right behind that first rock with their eyes like this and trying to take in all of the steps and all of the things to accomplish this goal all at once. And I got a little smarter as I grew a little older and a little wiser and a little better coach. And the goal didn't change. They still wanted to run the same waterfall, but instead I would pull up and say, "Hey, how are you feeling? This is going to be really fun. We're going to have a great time. It's going to go like this. We're going to pull up from this rock. We're going to go over into the main current. You're going to paddle off the right side. And when you get to the bottom, you're going to go left. Easy enough, right? Main current, go off the right, paddle left at the end. Boom." And I would say, "Come on." And we'd paddle off, and they'd be back there. Their eyes would still be like this, but they would follow me, right? They would actually go for the goal, and they would do it because there was that clarity of process. There wasn't, now sure, like when we think of a goal, our brain offers up all of these obstacles and all these things, reasons why it can't happen. But if we have a clear-cut plan that is 3, maybe 4 steps that we can return to, almost like a mantra, we do this, we do that, this, all the other smaller, complicated little obstacles tend to fall away, and people take action, they move forward.
Yeah. And you as a leader in that situation, right? You are confident, right? You're confident about the steps, and you're confident about the outcome, and your communication is clear, right? And that part is so important because, in the other part of me, right? I'm a trauma therapist. And so we know in trauma, like when people go into something and they don't know what to expect, or it feels confusing, that's when our stress responses, that's when our trauma responses come out. And it creates a much harder experience for that person that you're trying to explain this amazing goal to, right?
Well, we can forget, right? Because we do it every day, and we're there atop that waterfall or in that therapy chair every day, and we can sometimes forget or project that experience onto our clients and those we're trying to lead. And it's really important to remember how all of that is actually affecting them, and to really address that with a few clear, easy steps.
Absolutely. Okay. So the next piece here that we've been talking about behind the scenes is how important it is to use that clear communication, like we were just talking about, but also give the group that you're trying to unite behind this goal an opportunity to really see how it benefits them, how it benefits their teammates, how it benefits the company. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it is so key, right? Like there's often things that we would love people to do and participate in and contribute to as a team, but at the end of the day, we're all individuals, aren't we? Like we all have this morning where we wake up and we are sort of the hero of our own story as we walk around. And it's really important to give and honor that and give credit to that, and connect for people. All right, so how's this goal, this team goal, connect back to how you really benefit as an individual? And our brains are always looking for that, like survive and thrive, right? And how do I do that with as little expenditure of energy as possible? And so if we can really tune into, all right, on a primal level, they need to see how this goal helps them survive and thrive in a clear enough way where they don't have to waste a ton of time or brain cells trying to figure out that connection. We have to draw it really clearly. And then also, it requires us to have some awareness on what is the hero's journey that they're on as individuals, and how does this goal fit into that path for them. What is it that they're really trying to transform into as a character? What are the problems that they're encountering on the multiple levels? And then how are you as a guide being able to frame this goal as a way to help address and help them on that path of personal transformation? So we have the group goal, but then how does it help the individuals within that group become who it is that they're trying to become?
Yeah. It's so important because, whatever goal it is, it might take them putting out some extra effort, right?
It usually does. Good goals will
Usually
like summon some energy that wouldn't normally be there, right?
So especially in this time that we're in, right? Like everything kind of feels hard in business, and teams are getting burnt out. And so when we go to them and we say, okay, we have this goal, we have this team goal, and I want you to spend energy on it, right? It's so important that they understand and sort of get excited about that, right? That becomes motivating instead of depleting.
Absolutely. Yes. And it does have to connect back to something that they deeply care about and does stir something in, does excite them, because at the end of the day, we take those actions based on how we're feeling. And if people are feeling depleted right now, it's feeling hard to summon that extra energy. And so to create that intrinsic motivation and define that energy, it's really, really key to connect that to the greater goal that they're personally trying to achieve.
So next we were going to talk about what if this goal that we're trying to unite our team behind is actually controversial, right? So in this time of COVID, business owners and leaders in the business have had to make some hard decisions and try to unite a team behind goals that might be a little controversial. People have different opinions on it. So what are your thoughts on that when you're going to a team that might be really split on how they approach something like this?
It's something that us as business owners actually are having to do, in some cases, a better job of messaging than some of our leaders are out there in the world, political leaders and otherwise. And one of the big rules that goes along with creating and getting through controversial and challenging times is consistency of message, and having that be well crafted and thought through so that you can be very consistent with your stance on it and be able to communicate in a range of different ways. Because there are a lot of different people out there, they're going to take in information differently, but it takes hearing something consistently 6, 7, sometimes 8 times before it really sinks in. And doing that the exact same way every time isn't necessarily going to work for everybody. So somebody might really benefit from a kind of video explanation of here's our policy and why. And then we also bring it up in the team meeting and have a dialogue and have more open communication about it. And then maybe there's also a written form, an email that goes out to everybody reiterating that. And also maybe there's a chance to have individual check-ins over the next couple of months where you bring it up again and really talk about why it is that this is the direction we're going, and here's the real reasons, and have it be consistent through every channel over a bit of time. And it does really help people feel at least comforted and settled that it's stable and it is going to be something that you can count on and predict when everything else has been so unpredictable and so hard to count on. So that's really, really important. Also, just one of the things we always talk about with clients is being the guide, and a good guide embodies both empathy and authority. And we need to have a really good balance of both. There needs to be enough authority and enough firm stance to where this is the choice we're making for the business, and here's why, and the data and the criteria we're using to make that decision. But then also coupled with that empathy and really hearing them and what their concerns are, and really taking the time to address those things in a clear way. So empathy and authority and just consistency of message over time using multiple channels is really key with this communication campaign around any sort of controversial measure or goal that might be out there.
Yeah. And I think it's important, that piece of like, we can have empathy, right? And we can listen, and we want to listen, and we want to create those opportunities. Like you said, okay, I can send a video to explain this. I can have one-to-one chats to explain this. I'm going to keep inviting those conversations. We're going to, have a discussion as a group, and I can listen as the leader, right? It doesn't always mean that we say yes or that we change the policy.
Right.
And that's where the authority comes in. And I think that's just a really important piece that I've learned over the years, and from you, of coming from that coaching and guiding place as a leader, and knowing like it's actually okay to keep our policy if we know it's the way, it's what we need to do right now for the business, right?
Yeah, when you jump around, there's going to be somebody else on the other side of that policy that wishes you kept it the same way, and
Absolutely.
you're never going to make everybody happy. So, that is so key.
So, Paul, I'd love to know what are some common mistakes that leaders make when they're trying to unite their team behind a common goal?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And those common mistakes that leaders make are important to address, because I hear it a lot of like, well, goals don't work, or goal setting didn't work for us or our team, or I don't like to set goals. And it's often because it's not really done in the right way, and these common mistakes keep coming up. And the first one is just, how much buy-in and opportunity are you giving those involved with the goal the chance to actually contribute to what that goal is? And people are going to have so much more motivation and buy-in for those goals if they had a hand in creating them in the first place. And so one of the things I see often is leaders will kind of go away either with their consultant or their coach or their accounting team or maybe upper management, and they'll like make all these goals and then just sort of lay them on the rest of the team. And that it can go well, but it can also create a lot of resistance. Even if that team would have been into that goal, not having had the input into it, people are automatically going to try to shoot holes in it, or decide how that's not going to work, because that's just what our brains do. Here's this thing we want. Here's all the reasons that's not going to work. And so that's what people naturally are going to do. So having that input in the first place, but then also really making sure that they are kind of breaking that goal into milestones. So that second mistake we hear most often and we experience out there is we have this big goal and we set it and we just sort of put our heads down and work towards it. But what about those opportunities to celebrate the little wins and the things along the way that show progress towards that goal? I talk about it in terms of, we have like the river kayaking. I also do a lot of sea kayaking. And on the river, it's easy to tell you're moving. Like every twist in the river, there's a new scene, you're passing rocks and trees. It's all very close to you in this point of reference. Out on the ocean, you could paddle for hours staring at the same thing, and it's hard to know if you're ever even moving. And so
I've actually had that experience.
Yeah, right. It's exhausting, especially if the tide's going out. And so it can be a real mental challenge there to keep going without those milestones. So break the goals into smaller chunks and then celebrate when you get to those milestones, because it gives people motivation to get to the next one. Mm-hmm. And lastly, that third mistake is kind of assuming that people remember what the goal is.
Yes.
It's hard. It's busy out there. People have lots of things going on in their world. A lot of things happen and change. As soon as you set that goal, the circumstances in which you set it change. just naturally. And so it's really important to make sure and be pointing the direction to, gang, this is where we're headed. Remember, this is the goal. This is why we're doing this. And often these things get kind of formulated, laid out in a team meeting, and then they go maybe in a binder to look at next quarterly meeting, or maybe even never look at it again. And so bringing it up in team meetings, having it having like the thermometer, are we almost to the goal, creating those ways that you can see and track visual progress towards it, and reminding people always of this is where we're headed and why.
Mhm. Yeah. And this is another reason why I'm such an advocate for frequent team meetings, especially in a wellness center, multidisciplinary setting. And all of my coaching clients hear me talk about this all the time. More meetings are good. And even if you're breaking out into smaller teams or doing these sort of like huddles or check-ins, just so that it's frequent and that you can keep checking in on the status of those goals and really taking those moments to celebrate when you're meeting the milestones.
Yes, and especially now, I mean, teams are having a harder time connecting than ever. Having those regular meetings, if they're structured well and are productive, had so much value and so much opportunity to connect with fellow team members. And I advocate for more well-crafted meetings that have a
Yes,
purpose.
let's be clear.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So next, I would love to know if you have any frameworks or sort of structures that would help our audience in creating goals.
Absolutely. There's so many of them out there, right? There's a lot of different ways to do goal setting. And I find that I love to lean on what is really the most compelling tool one can use to help motivate an individual, especially yourself. And that's story. Story is such a sense-making device for our brains, right? We make sense of the world through story. And if we can turn our goals into a vivid depiction or a narrative, it really helps our brain engage with it. It also helps us make those goals shareable outside of our little bubble. And when we share our goals, it's really powerful because it does two things. It lets people in to help. And then it also creates some accountability. You sort of have to then go ahead and start pursuing that goal that you put out into the universe. The other thing that story really does is it starts kind of setting your filter. Like everybody has this experience, right? When they are looking for, maybe it's a new car, or they were looking for that next bicycle they really love to buy. All of a sudden you see bicycles everywhere, or that model of car everywhere, right? Like that reticular activating system just filters in and lets you see all of those things that match up with that thing you've tuned it to. And when we create this goal narrative, all of a sudden we're tuning our brain to see all the opportunities and all the reasons why that's possible in alignment. And there's a really great way and a formula to put this together that's really like takes the old SMART goal formula and expands on it. So the SMART goals is specific and measurable. All the goals need to be very specific and measurable, so you can again celebrate the wins along the way. Actionable, right? We actually need to be able to do something to create this outcome that we're looking for. Realistic is important, and then timed. Like if the goal is not set to a time, it's meaningless. But we take it a bit farther with clients. I really love making smarter goals. It's smarter because we make them also exciting, is the E. We have written as a story, is the R, a little tricky, 3 R's, and then shared. So we take those SMART goals, and often like bullet list form, and create a story narrative around them that's set in the future, and write a vivid depiction as though it's happening now. And that can be a really powerful way to like walk around in your goal a little bit and feel it. And we take so many actions based on how we feel about things. What a great tool to be able to experiment and see, is this really even what I want? And then if it is, and it feels good and stirs something in you, well, how do you use that story day to day, week to week? Like when you need that extra pick me up or that reminder of like, why am I doing all these interviews, or why am I setting this next thing up in my business? It's all right, because as soon as I read the story, it transports me to that space. So that's a really, really good formula. It's called a goal story formula, and folks can contact me through you or visit my site to go see how to do that. But there is also the need, I think, for a really strong mission statement. So I love the goal story formula for individual goals and really seeing where you want to be personally. But then creating a strong mission statement for the business is also another form of goal setting. And a lot of those mission statements, unfortunately, end up as chock full of legalese from the HR department and from whoever else, and become pretty long like documents or paragraphs full of really like artfully put together words that nobody remembers, and they end up in an HR binder back on the shelf covered in dust, and it doesn't summon any energy. It doesn't lead us anywhere. And so goal story for personal goals, mission statement formula, the simplest one you'll ever hear, that my coach trainer, Don Miller, author of Building a Story Brand, gave me in a recent training. Here it is, it's super simple. We will accomplish X thing by Y timeframe because Z reason, or Y, what's the actual purpose. And if you put together a mission statement that's that simple and compelling enough, it should, like, people should be able to picture you like riding around on horseback with like a blue face screaming it. Like, if it's not worthy of summoning like a whole army of people to go and take on this thing, it's not there yet. And so creating a personal set of goals and building a strong story around it. And then the business is a vehicle to accomplish something bigger than yourself, right? So what is the mission that you're inviting people on and into that they can feel passionate about as well? That's two good formulas that at least get it started.
And formulas are so important in these situations, right? Because it helps us as leaders clearly envision, why are we actually asking our team to unite behind this goal? Right? And if we are so clear on it, that confidence, that clarity comes through to the team, and they can see how excited we are about it. And we can see into the future, right? So like Paul's talking about the goal story, and I first learned about goal story from Paul originally, and it is a very powerful tool. And if you've been in my workshops and my coaching groups, individual coaching, we do this, right? Because it's so powerful to write from the future and get really detailed about, okay, if we actually accomplish this goal as a team, here's how we'll feel, here's where we'll be, here's what we'll be doing, here's who's with us, right? And it becomes reality.
Absolutely. It's something you have to be so clear that you can like draw the picture, or even like the goal story pulls in all five senses. But you think about that goal that you have out there, like, can you actually draw a picture of it? Is it that clear? That's a really good indicator if you're on the right track. Okay.
So lastly, I'd love to talk about like, why even have goals in general? And why have team goals, and what happens if we actually don't reach these goals?
That's a really good question. And it happens, right? And goals are meant to be adjusted up and down. And so I think something that is important to cover right off the bat and make sure people are aware of is that goals are not a fixed point situation. We set them in order to set a trajectory, but then they need to be adjusted along the way, and based on the numbers that you start receiving. And you might need to move that goal even further beyond where you thought you could put it, and move it upwards so that you can actually achieve everything that is possible. And I think that gets to what one of the main reasons of goal setting is because you're going to be able to achieve more than you would have otherwise, even if you don't reach the goal in its entirety. But it can also set that trajectory, because when we get what we aim for. And if we aim for nothing, you're not going to get what you want. You're going to get nothing, right? So we have this ability to provide a lot of clarity also for our team. It's sort of like, imagine if you were setting off on a hike or a paddling trip or a journey, and there was just a bunch of fog that you were going to lead folks into, and no particular place you were trying to find, just going to go for a walk. How long do you think folks will follow you through the fog?
Not very long. I know I wouldn't. I'd be like, I'm out of here.
A bad plan. And that's all we get when we're running a business is uncertainty or fog. And so, if we're going to find our way through that and expect our teams to step into the unknown and follow us through some foggy times, it really helps that they know that you have at least an idea or a destination that you're leading them to. And that's really important to communicate that along the way. There's a lot of reassurance. But yeah, we don't always reach them. And that's okay. It's okay to adjust goals backwards a little bit, but don't use that as a reason not to set them at all. Otherwise, somebody will set goals for you, and you'll be sort of following somebody else's path and being much more reactionary.
Yeah, I love that. Like, there's always barriers that come up. There's obstacles that come up. Things change. There's so many unexpected things that happen in owning a business. And so It's just, every time that happens for us at the studio, I just go back to that goal story. I go back to the longer term vision and rearrange it. Okay, how does this unexpected thing impact the vision, or does it? And here we go.
Yep.
Keep
Make
going.
an adjustment. What we want to avoid is that narrative void. We
Mhm.
want to avoid that lack of story. You want to be caught sitting watching the credits of a story.
Sure.
You want to keep moving towards something, and so that's important to keep adjusting. Love that you do that.
Well, thanks so much for being here, Paul. And if you want to talk through specific situations you're struggling with regarding leading your team with Paul or I, you can email us at paul@tributarycoaching.com and Kendall at vancouverwellnessstudio.com. Have a great day, everybody.